And we keep going with this extensive collection.
Gosh.
It's crazy when you put them all out. Huh? Now we're going to talk about another one of your exceptional recent acquisition,
Yeah,
Breguet.
early last year. So the Breguet 7097 reference tradition. This one being the retrograde seconds. Um, well, what can you say about this? I mean, Breguet is the greatest watchmaker of them all, and this is so representative of everything that Breguet did, and that's probably Breguet's Achilles heel, that they're stuck in this mould of the turn of the 19th century, sort of 1800, 1798, 1800, when the original type of this pocket watch first appeared. Um, but yeah, it's just
Give it a wipe.
a phenomenal piece of watchmaking. And again, all using traditional watchmaking methods. So the dial, again, is done traditionally on a straight line engine. Um, the movement has a very minimal amount of beveling because Breguet himself didn't focus on finishing. That wasn't what he was about. But all the beveling is all done by hand. The engraving on the back of the rotor, and I think the Breguet name itself on the back of the movement plate, is all hand engraved. You have a white gold rotor there as well, which is a nod to...
Very original rotor. What's the story with that?
Well, Breguet had a pendulum rotor, not a 360 degree rotor, but he had a pendulum weight that was an automatic winding mechanism, which was the same shape as the rotor. So this just is a 360 degree rather than being a pendulum.
So all the finishes are frosted on the plate.
Frosted, yeah, which is done with a sandblasting using like glass bead blasting. But all the straight lines are beveled and polished by hand. And whilst it's not the top level of polishing, it has all been done by hand. Despite what many people think, it's not machine done, it's hand done. And the word Breguet is engraved by hand by their engraving team. And the dial is made of gold and then engraved using a straight line engine, traditional straight line engine, and a rose engine as well, because the rose engine would need to do the outer, I can't remember the name of that particular pattern, but the Clou de Paris pattern is done on what's called a straight line engine, but it's all done by hand by Breguet's specialist team. That they have quite a large number of rose engines and straight line engines, and they're planning to set up a school for teaching it at some point. It's just phenomenal.
To wind it for us.
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah.
To see the complication in action.
This one has also the parachute shock protection device that is a copy of the original that Breguet had back in 1798, I think, was when he first launched a watch that used that device. So there is a small spring device there that there's not some people think there's a conventional shock absorber underneath, and that's just a dummy. It's not. It is actually the shock absorber. The only nod to modernity that there is with this is it actually has a silicon hairspring. And hidden underneath the cock is a join, because they couldn't put a Breguet terminal curve in the silicon. They can't bend it into that. So it's actually two pieces joined together with a tiny little joining block. So the terminal curve is formed separately and then joined to the main coils of the spring underneath the cock. So you can't see it. But it's very clever. But yeah, silicon hairspring. And probably Breguet would have approved. I mean, he was experimenting with materials and material science all the time. That was what he did. So I suspect he would totally welcome the use of a silicon hairspring, which is anti-magnetic, of course. That's its main advantage, and it's thermally, it's not affected by temperature. and you have a snail cam mechanism on the reverse for the retrograde seconds. So it's when you see it get up to the 16, it just drops back down again in an instant.
It's a lot of watch.
It is, yeah, it is a lot of watch, and these can be purchased, you know, relatively inexpensively because they're Breguet. So you can often find new old stock pieces for sale in these sort of surplus dealers for a fraction of the retail price that they would normally be, and that's exactly how I got this. So it's a huge amount of watch for Rolex money.
Sublime. Sublime as well. Your best watch?
Yeah.
I have the same. It's actually my son's favorite watch. Looking at my collection, my son said, I asked him which one is his favorite, and this is the one. This is the one that he would keep out of everything. Ahead of my date, we were just saying you don't have a Rolex in your collection.
No,
which is crazy. But you do have a Tudor. We'll have a look in.
I've had Rolex in the past. I've had a lot of Rolex before, but currently no.
Well, this one I've reviewed it on the channel. I often show it in my own collection. To me, this is where Grand Seiko everything came together.
Yeah, I mean
Beautiful
everything. Yeah, the
case.
design, the dial, the bracelet. Even on this one, I had to manufacture my own half link for this. I took my spare link and chopped it to bits and managed to make a half link, which now means that this fits perfectly. But I have it because it's a spring drive, because it's the most significant development in movements since the lever escapement, really. It's phenomenal how that works, that it's this hybridization of quartz and mechanical. I see it more as a mechanical movement with a small electronic component. There are others that will argue to the death that it's a quartz movement, but yeah, okay, whatever. But it doesn't matter. No.
When you have it, it's just so mesmerizing, and it's the only watch that's always on time.
Yeah. Oh,
pick it
the
up.
accuracy of it is just.
It's got a long power reserve.
Phenomenal.
And, 3 days later, it's still on the dot. But I just love the dial. But to me, this pebble shape. I mean, there's no independent that.
And with the power reserve indicator on the back, of course, it's the most symmetrical of them all, of all of the spring drives. Yeah. It's such a beautiful watch. Yeah. I am visiting Tokyo at the end of the month, actually, so I'm going to wear this.
Yeah, I adore mine, and this is the Grand Seiko for me, but you do have another one.
I have another one, yeah, and this is the only
very,
quartz
very
watch
different.
that I have in my collection, and I think, you know, we can't ignore, it's a beast, isn't it? It's called the Grey Beast, actually, and we can't ignore the role that quartz watches have played, because in fact without quartz watches we wouldn't have the mechanical watches we have today, because it was because of the quartz watch destroying the mechanical watch industry of the 70s and 80s. Incidentally, it destroyed Japan's own mechanical watch industry as well. People often don't realise that. So it was self-inflicted wound as well as damaging the Swiss. But without that, we wouldn't have had the mechanical revival, because the industry wouldn't have been restructured the way it was, and that we have all these amazing mechanical watches today. But this is the 9F quartz movement, accurate to within, is it a second a year, I think? And it's made to the standards of a piece of high horology. The movement is properly decorated. It's adjustable. The accuracy is adjustable on it. The battery compartment is sealed away from the rest of the movement, so that in the event of a leak, it won't damage the movement. This is quartz movement at its best, and it has. If you were to slow down the filming, if you did a slow motion video of this, you'll see the second hand actually ticks twice every second. But it's imperceptible, and it does that because it has a dual stepper motor, which is needed because these hands are full-sized and luminous as well, which have a weight to them rather than being quite short like a normal quartz watch would be. And to have the power to drive it, it needs to have 2 motors to do that. But also the other thing is that the second hand lands on its marker absolutely precisely every time, because there is also a kind of a remontoire spring there's a hairspring that the second hand is driven by that prevents any vibration, so that the hairspring so that the second hand lands on its marker precisely every time. So it's not a cheap disposable quartz movement. It's beautifully made.
Well, it's part of the history of watchmaking.
Yeah.
Right? Breguet would love this.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure he would.
It's
I'm sure he
nuts.
would, absolutely. And the case, it's more typical of the Grand Seiko aesthetic of the grammar of design, where this is very Western in style, really, I suppose.
Yeah, there's nothing else from Grand Seiko that looks like this.
No,
This
it's
watch
not.
is such
Quite
an
unique,
oddball
isn't it? Yeah.
and so gorgeous.
Yeah.
If you want to buy a Grand Seiko, you almost wouldn't look at it because you wanted that look, the sharp look.
Yeah.
But this is the... Yeah,
And I haven't,
special.
just out of curiosity, I haven't looked at this. Where's my phone? I haven't looked at this watch for a long time, but I'm just curious to
You
see.
can look at my very accurate master.
This is actually,
Tudor.
this is about 1 second fast. And yeah, that's like 1 second fast.
Not bad, huh?
I haven't set the time on that probably for, I should imagine, well, I haven't set the time since I got it. I mean, literally about a year.
When you have to leave the house in a hurry,
Yeah.
you pick up your Grand Seiko. That's the only one
Yeah.
that's running on time. From well, I guess from Grand Seiko, we can move to your. Well, we were mentioning actually Rolex.
Yeah.
Why not?
Um,
Pelagos.
I had a lot of Rolex before. I've had a couple of new Rolex, and I had quite a lot of vintage Rolex in the past. And I've just moved on from them, really. The vintage Rolex, I got caught by the Franken watches that you find very frequently here. And I made some big mistakes because I didn't know enough about them before I bought them, and I rushed into the purchase, regretfully. The one new Rolex I had was an Explorer 2, the 214270 with a luminous marker, so it was the second generation of the 214270,
Right.
39 mil. And I had it for about 6 months. I always wanted it. And I just, after a while, I just thought, this is so boring. This watch just is just so uninteresting. It's almost too perfect. I think that was the problem with it. So the Tudor Pelagos 39, well, this is the affordable Rolex that, you know, once Rolex became unobtainable during the COVID years, and then the bubble, and still unobtainable now, unless you're prepared to pay the grey market price, which I'm simply not, then this was the next best thing. If you want a dive watch that does everything that it's supposed to do for a fraction of the price.
Yeah, I think there's tons of videos about the Pelagos 39. It is with a bit of a little red line. It's it's perfect, right?
It's a phenomenal watch. Yeah, it's a great watch. You for one watch, if you weren't really interested in watches but wanted a nice, decent watch, this would sure fit.
The whole Pelagos range is maybe Tudor at its best because it's original without being wacky.
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
they've done sometimes, and professional tools. This one for the everyday consumer compared to the more the diver style. Fantastic, and next to it we have the Zenith.
Well, chronographs actually. We've got two other chronographs. I should have perhaps bring all of them out because there's a.
There you go. Let's go. Chronographs.
The Zenith, the El Primero. I mean, it needs no introduction, does it? It's such a legendary movement, and the story of how they hid the tooling for the movement because the American, ironically same name, Zenith Radio Company, were trying to kill the watches off, and in fact they didn't believe in mechanical watches at all. They wanted Zenith to produce quartz watches, so the guy hid the tooling. I mean, it's just stuff of legends, and such a great movement. Even Rolex used it in the Daytona for a 10-year period. This is the first generation of the reissue of the original El Primero. So they brought this out in 4 dial combinations, so it was each of the sub-dial colours, and this so you had a grey dial, there was a white dial, the blue dial, 3 dial colours, not 4, And I always liked the blue one in particular. I thought it had this really deep blue that almost looks black. The second generation and current iteration of this has a slightly different shaped case. This has got 4 screws retaining it.
Right.
The other one actually screws into the case. And so the current one is the more accurate one if you're talking about re-editions. So this one's about 4 or 5 years old now, I think. But just, love the El Primero. And then the Breitling, that's how to do a re-edition properly. Breguet, are you paying attention? Yes, you know.
Ooh, more controversy on the channel.
Because the latest Type 20 is just, such a missed opportunity.
Does it rotate?
Yep, absolutely. Yep. So this is quite a faithful re-edition of the AVI 765 that Breitling brought out in 1953, right. I think it was. Exactly the same as the original. The only differences being that it doesn't say Genève on the dial, because Breitling are no longer in Geneva. And the movement is, of course, their more modern column wheel chronograph with a vertical clutch movement, but it's still manual winding. It's the same diameter. The original was this size. It has a Hesselite crystal. The pushers are slightly more protruding than the original one, but that's about it. The rest of it is almost identical. The hands, the dial, the luminous material, it's not a faux patina. It's actually designed to be the same colour that tritium would have been, or actually probably would have been radium back then, would have been when the watch was new in 1953. So hence why it has this sort of yellowish colour to it. Yeah, that's how to do a re-edition. And this one is a watch that is quite sort of personal to me because I did a huge amount of modifying to this watch. This originally started out life as a first Omega in space, which had a sapphire crystal and it had a satin, God knows why, a satin dial, and it had this weird alpha running second hand, but stick markers on the chronograph hands, and had a crown that was so narrow you almost couldn't grip hold of it to wind it. And I just for the life of me cannot think why they did that with the crown when the other re-editions they did had a normal crown. So this has got a Hesselite conversion, a proper matte dial with the short stubby logo and the long tail R on the Speedmaster. It's a period original CK2998-6, which is what this is meant to be, from 1958, I think it would have been originally. This is an original crown, which I found in Hong Kong on carousel for 300 Hong Kong dollars. I can't believe my luck, because normally these things are like rocking horse droppings, they're so rare. And I did all the conversion myself. So I've totally ruined the warranty, sorry Omega. Forstner Bands bracelet, yeah. Kept the original case back. So the only thing I haven't changed is the bezel insert and the case back. I'm not trying to make it into I'm just making it better than what Omega released with the first Omega in space. And I'm a bit of an amateur, I won't say watchmaker, that's a strong word to use. I'm an amateur tinkerer. I have taught myself to strip apart a 2824 and a 7750 movement, put it back together and lubricate it properly. But that's about the limit of my capabilities. Proper watchmakers are far more skillful than me. But yeah, and so this I was quite pleased at being able to do this.
It looks stunning.
And
the Cartier.
Finally, the Cartier, yeah, the Santos.
And la Cartier.
Santos Carree, not to be confused with the Galbi, which is the slightly later one, but people always call this the Galbi mistakenly. The Galbi has a curved case if you look at it from the side, and the links, the top surfaces of the links of the Galbi are also curved. So the Carree is the original one from 1978, I think they first brought that out, and kept on producing this until or was it 1980 something? Anyway, but they kept on manufacturing this until the late 90s, I think it was, alongside the Galbay. The Galbay was introduced in the early 90s, and they made these side by side for a while for some reason. But you can also tell the Carree because it has the date at 3 o'clock. So it has an enamel dial, which they had, and the blued hands, a simple little ETA, a smaller sized ETA 27 something movement, and made famous by Gordon Gekko.
Michael Douglas was wearing that.
But the all yellow gold version. And these are, I mean, at the moment they're really cheap. A two-tone watch, what could be better if you're going to get a two-tone watch than this particular version of a two-tone watch? And it's a great collector piece. They can be had in, you can buy them in fairly beaten up condition, very cheap. This one's in reasonable condition. It's not perfect. It has been repolished, but not been done badly or excessively.
Well, I can't believe we got through the whole collection. How does it feel to review everything that
it's
you
the first time I've ever done this. So
it's a bit overwhelming, no?
It is actually, yeah, it is.
But
I think the only thing, I mean, I've got quite a varied collection, and that is what I like. I don't like to focus on one brand or one style of watch.
Yeah.
Each one, as I said at the beginning, most of them have a story. Some of them don't. Some of them just because I just like them a lot. But that's generally me. I buy what I like, not to necessarily follow any trend. I try to avoid the hype watches where possible. I used to have an FP Jaune. I sold that sadly before the hype. Oh God! And you know, I found the receipt for that recently. I paid $224,000 Hong Kong dollars for that, not US dollars, Hong Kong dollars. And at one time they were up to $850. But yeah, sold it before that. But yeah, I buy out of passion. I don't buy for investment sake. And many of these watches will lose money if you sell them anyway.
But it's a wonderful collection.
But they give me
so many watches that we
pleasure.
never talked about even on the channel, never got to see, and so I hope everyone learned something, discovered something. Maybe some of the people watching this collection review are already scouring Chrono 24 and eBay to find some of those interesting pieces. And yeah, I'm sure if we do this again in a couple of years, there will be a lot of changes in the collection.
I don't know. I'm coming towards the end of my intense collecting activities because next year I'll be 65. I'm not sure if I'm going to retire or not, but if I do, I won't have a source of income. I don't have big pension pots put away, unfortunately. So, I mean, again, I'm solely reliant on my extremely generous and gracious wife because she's the main breadwinner. But there will come a time where I just simply won't be able to buy much more. So I think I'm in the sort of the prime now of my collecting.
Well, if I may say, you have watches for... You can live up until 300 years old, and you have enough watches to cover.
Oh, for sure.
to cover it if you turn into a vampire.
Dash.
The watches will probably outlive you. Yeah, it was fantastic discovering your collection. And
thank you very much
for welcoming me in your home.
All right, so it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and thank you for putting up with me.
Yeah, you guys are coming to Hong Kong, or if you've never been to the shop, Mr. Chrono, go say hi to Mark. And any issue with your strap, you want to buy a winder, a box,
or even if you just want to come in and have a coffee.
Of course, you can do it
chat watches
online. But I think you will appreciate the service that you get, especially if you order a custom strap. You will love the service. It's going to be perfect. I can speak from experience.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
So thank you guys for watching. Give it a like and maybe subscribe if
thank you.
You came here by accident. And thank you, Mark. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bonjour mes amis. Hi guys. Collection review day. Very nice, ever evolving and well, it's involving as well. Let's do it again. Bonjour mes amis, hi guys.